Hello everybody, my name is Chikirza, and welcome to another art journal video. I'm continuing to use this Canson mixed media sketchbook, and the plan today is to recreate a character that I created digitally last year for a short, fun St. Patrick's Day video that I have posted on my channel. Feel free to check out that video after you've finished watching this one and see how many correct answers you can get. First, I cut out a heart from some printer paper scraps that I had laying around to use as a template for the clover leaves. I'm using a black, erasable colored pencil that I picked up at the dollar store, and just tracing the outside portion of the heart. Oh, and let's add a stem. So I'm using these gel crayons, one from Crayola and one from a pack that I got at the dollar store. They're two different shades of green, and I want to recreate the gradient effect that I have in the original digital photo. So I'm using a baby wipe here and just spreading some on the baby wipe and then rubbing it on the page. Sometimes I'm applying it directly to the paper and rubbing it around with the baby wipe. And I'm not really getting the gradient effect that I'm looking for, so I'm just going in and adding a little bit more to deepen the effect. I added a little bit of water to the baby wipe here, and that definitely helps it spread out a lot better. However, I also found at this point that the more I was rubbing on the paper, now this is just regular mixed media paper, I don't have any gesso or anything down on this paper, but the more I'm rubbing at it, and now I've got a wet surface, it's starting to break down my paper. So I decided to call it quits here before I actually rub through the paper. Not super happy with the gradient effect, but maybe we'll go back and do something with it after, once the paper dries a little bit. So I'm using some black Deco Art craft acrylic paint here, and I'm just trying to select what brushes I want to use. Grabbed a couple of paintbrushes that I bought at the dollar store, and I watered down the acrylic paint a little bit and mix it up. I want to paint a nice black background, make that four-leaf clover really stand out. Get a little bit more paint and a little bit more water. I just find that adding the water to it makes it glide across the page a little bit better. Now I can barely see the outlines of this clover, so I just used the colored erasable pencil again to darken up the stem part. I can barely see the outside of the leaves, but I was like, well, I think I can probably wing it with the leaves. Using nice solid strokes on the outsides, hoping that I'm not going to get any jagged lines. But of course, what we hope is going to happen and what actually happens when we're creating isn't always on the same page. Doesn't always seem to be what you plan. But that's part of the fun of creating stuff. I'm still new to the art process and playing with different supplies. And I wasn't really happy with the outside edges of the hearts, so I just used the template from the paper cutout that I used again, and just redid some of the lines where I thought it needed a little bit of fixing up. go in and do those little tiny touch-ups. I could have left it, but me being the perfectionist that I am, which I'm still working on trying to let go, I couldn't let this one go. I'm trying to recreate a picture here. And if you're going to recreate something, you want it to be pretty much the same as the original. Now that the paper's dry, maybe I can intensify those colors. So I grab the gel crayon and rub it on the paper and rub it around with a wet wipe again. And that really intensified it. So I think the thing is that the paper was just too wet. So the structural integrity of the paper was giving way rather than more product being applied when I was trying to do it the first time. And that is much more intense. I'm much happier with that. Now I want to write something in that black space. But I ran out of room. So I'm using a white Stabillo all pencil, which is a water activated pencil. And I like using the white because you can just wipe it off with water. So I just used a wet wipe there. And go in and try it again. Move it over. Much better. So I've got these two gold acrylic paint pens that I picked up at the dollar store. One is a fine nib and the other one is like a normal nib, I guess you'd say. I wasn't sure which one I wanted to use, but I ended up going with the bigger nib. Beautiful gold color. Really impressed with these. Now what do I want to do? I need to put on eyes and a mouth and a hat. So remember I said that you can have a plan, but you don't necessarily know how it's going to turn out? Well, I didn't know what shade of green to use for the hat. I've got a number of shades of green, but they all seemed really light. And then I found this metallic paint that was on my shelf, and I thought, well, maybe I'll use that. I've got the gold for the writing, so maybe having the hat be a metallic green, maybe that would be really neat. But it's really transparent. So I wiped part of it away and decided to try coming in with a green, just a regular green, something darker. But this green is also somewhat transparent, so what am I going to do now? Next plan, wipe off that paint. Let's just make everything all black for where the hat is going to be. Start with one solid color. So the hat's going to cut across this part of the leaf. So now I'm dealing with all the same color background. I decided to wipe off some of the white Stabillo all pencil from underneath the gold lettering that I did. Unfortunately, it wasn't quite dry enough and I peeled up some of the paint. But I'll go back and fix that later. So I really wanted to try to use that green acrylic paint, the metallic one. But then looking at the picture, the original picture, there's a yellow or a gold buckle. So I was thinking, well, maybe this isn't such a good plan. So let's dry what's there. And now that we're working with all the same base coat, now let's try going in with that darker green. And that's turning out much better. Much better. But it's a little too dark for my liking. the hat's almost blending in with the background. So what am I going to do? Now, in the original picture, the hat actually had a gradient effect as well. So let's try doing a gradient effect on the hat. Lighten up the top part and maybe that will make it pop. Maybe that's the missing key. Now, I will say that doing gradients digitally is a lot easier than trying to do them with paint. At least it is for me, since I'm still a beginner to using paints. So it kind of went a little bit splotchy. Give it a quick dry and give it another shot. I think my thing with trying to do gradients with paint and like physical products is I expect it to be super gorgeous and perfect like it is when you do it digitally. And that's just not how it works. At least not for me at this point. Maybe it is for other people, but I haven't figured out all the techniques yet. One day, I might be a master. Or I might still just be playing around in my art journal. And that's fine either way. So we need to add the black band on the hat and also just define the hat itself. Give it a quick dry because now I need to add that gold buckle to it. So I'm using the same paint pen from the dollar store again. And since I'm going to be using it and the hat part that I just dried with the hairdryer is still somewhat warm, I decided to redo the lettering and thicken up some of those letters in the word lucky. It's funny that I say feeling lucky because with the struggles that I had with a couple of stages during making this, I wasn't feeling quite so lucky. I've still had a lot of fun though. Add the gold buckle to the hat. Now I'm liking the way this is coming along. I need to add the eyes now. And the big goofy grin. These are roughly the shapes. So I cut them out. And I actually liked the smile the opposite way to the way I drew it. So that's fine. It's just paper. You can just flip it over. Now that eye that I had planned for the left-hand side turned out a little bit too small. So I put it over to the right side and cut the other one much bigger. But it was a little bit too wide now, so I just took a little bit off the edge, thinned it up, and there we go. That's roughly about the size of the original ones. Grab my Elmer's glue stick here, and glue those eyes and the mouth onto the paper. Use the black paint pen, the Daler and Rowney black paint pen that I got at Walmart. Outline the mouth, make some teeth, do the little goofy eyes, and I'm done. Oh, no, I'm not. Let's be even more of a perfectionist and outline the outside to get rid of some of those little jagged edges that I couldn't do with the paintbrush. Now I'm done. Nope, I forgot the eyebrows. Can't forget those, that's part of the character. And now I'm done. I know I left out the 4-leaf clover on the hat, but at this point I was just done with paint. But I like how it turned out. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.